Hi everyone, welcome to Corporal Corner 6. First and foremost, we would like to remember the victims of the terror attack that occurred on 14 Riverside Drive on the 15th of January 2019. May the souls rest in peace, and may those who are recuperating in hospital, we want to wish them quick recovery. Now, today we want to talk about methods of acquisition to title to land. There are several methods of acquisition to title to land. According to Land Act number 6 of 2012, section 7, we have several methods. Number 1 being allocation, number 2 being through land adjudication process, number 3 through compulsory acquisition, number 4 through prescription, number 5 through land settlement programs, number 6 through transmission, number 7 through transfers, number 8 through long-term leases exceeding 21 years created out of private land, and number 9 by an act of parliament by any other manner as prescribed by an act of parliament. Now, let us highlight just a few. The first one I would like to talk about is allocation. Now, for allocation is when you identify a parcel of land and it happens to be government land. When it is government land, you have to apply to the National Land Commission for allocation. If the National Land Commission finds it the parcel of land available for allocation, then the National Land Commission will approve your application and issue you with a lease of 99 years. Now, if the land is not available for allocation, by not available for allocation means that this parcel of land has been set aside for public utility purposes, then the commission would reject your application. Now, if you're given a lease of 99 years, now that lease has to be registered, then a certificate of title is issued in your favor. Number 2, let's talk about land adjudication process. Now, there are certain areas which have been demarcated, which the cabinet secretary might find necessary to be demarcated as adjudication areas to cater for the interest of certain communities or groups. And most of the times, these parcels of land are being held in trust by the county government. That is the type of land known as adjudication area. Now, the cabinet secretary may order for an adjudication process to commence. There will be formed adjudication committees and adjudication boards. There will be an adjudication recording officer. There will be a survey officer who will come to collect the demarcation points of the land. Then, through this process is what we call through a land adjudication process. This usually caters for the interests of communities. Number 3, compulsory acquisition. As for compulsory acquisition, this is when the government is pursuing or putting up a project in an area, and this area is an area where the parcel of land is under private hands. The government will have to compulsorily acquire after they have identified the ownership of the land. If the land does not belong to the government, or the land has already been leased to a private individual or a group, then the government may have to compulsorily acquire that portion. Now, for compulsory acquisition, it is the government that is now putting up a project or wants to use that said parcel of land for public purposes, but then it had already issued the parcel of land into private hands, or conferred the parcel of land into private hands. Then they may be forced to identify the portion that they want out of the total area of the land or the whole area of the land, and then they will have to commence a compensation process. Now, this compensation process is carried out by the National Land Commission. The National Land Commission will conduct valuation over the parcel of land. They will gazette. They will put the notice on the Kenya Gazette, and then they will compensate. Then the parcel of land is compulsorily acquired. For prescription, this is where you have lived in a parcel of land for a period exceeding 12 years uninterruptedly. Now, you do not have ownership documents for this parcel of land. Now, you can move the courts through the law of adverse possession to issue you or to order the land registrar, to insert your name on the record as the owner of that parcel of land. The prescription method is usually the method where you acquire a parcel of land by right of adverse possession. Now, method number 5 is through land settlement programs. You must have heard of the famous Waitiki settlement program. Now, the Waitiki settlement program is where an individual owns a title to land, but the land is occupied by what we can call squatters. Now, the squatters move the government to acquire the land on their behalf by settling the private owner. Now, this land is converted into a settlement scheme. Once it has been converted into a settlement scheme, let's talk about transmission. Transmission is when the registered owner of a parcel of land is deceased. Now, the courts, even before the courts, the registered owner, before his death, may decide to register a will on how their property is going to be distributed. Or the registered owner may be deceased without having done a will on how their land is going to be distributed. Now, when the courts conduct, when you conduct succession of the estate of a deceased, now the courts may award those they fit to be beneficiaries of an estate of a deceased person by issuing them with letters of administration. Now, this is what we call transmission. And when somebody dies without a will, that is when they die intestate, the process of conveying the property from their ownership to the ownership of the beneficiaries is what we refer to as transmission. Transfers. For transfers, that is when you own a parcel of land and you have decided to sell that parcel of land. The next person acquires the title through an instrument known as a transfer. That is also another method of acquisition of title to land, because the next owner becomes an innocent purchaser for value by virtue of the instrument of the transfer. Now, let us talk about long-term leases exceeding 21 years created out of private land. Now, one might own a parcel of land for a leasehold period of 99 years or for an absolute tenure, but they may decide to develop that land and create leases that exceed 21 years. When the lease created exceeds 21 years, automatically that lease becomes a title. Now let's talk about any other manner prescribed by an act of parliament. If the parliament decides to prescribe any other laws that may confer ownership of a parcel of land to an individual or a group, that also becomes a method of acquisition to title.